All right, welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Thank you for those of you who have been tuned in through most of the day. I know Mari and I have been monitoring the chat, also monitoring all the data that we possibly can. First, let's get started with a storm update on Hurricane Dorian. There's not much to really report as far as changes. They're very, very slight. This storm is still dangerous. We are still looking at a Category 4 hurricane. And right now, the latest update is as this. We are looking at a stationary movement still. And this update came out at 8 p.m. Actually, you know what? I'm going to wait a little bit, see if... Nope, this is the 9 o'clock edition. It just came out. So we know that winds are at 140 miles per hour sustained. We also know that pressure is at 942. That is also the same. Stationary at 0 miles per hour. Is not moving at all right now. So very dangerous situation down here for Freeport in the Bahamas. This storm has not gone anywhere, and that is very, very unfortunate because we have been watching this now for over 24 hours. This area has just been affected with hurricane force winds. The footage that Mari is playing, guys, you know, I'm not trying to promote any kind of religion or anything, but you have to understand the power of prayer in some people's life. That's all they have right now. If you're looking at this footage, and a lot of folks have said, well, they could have evacuated. Well, yeah, the tourists probably could have. The tourists have the money to travel there in the first place, so more than likely they have the money to travel back to get home safe and sound. However, these folks that live out here in the islands, it's not like they can just jump on the highway and drive 4 hours west. That's not how it works. You got to talk about people who can't afford to take a flight to Florida or even further west than that. How many days are they going to be staying in a hotel? There's just so many unknowns. The cost of actually evacuating this island is not normal for normal people. And the hope is that they have enough storm shelters in place to help take care of the people that are in need of shelter during this awful storm. I can tell you right now, just from listening to this radio station that we are linked in with right now, and some of the areas, like some of the churches that they were talking about that are gone, those were supposed to be evacuation centers. Those were supposed to be storm shelters, and those no longer exist. So, guys, there's a lot of information to absorb right now. And this is just the Bahamas. And like I said earlier in the chat, we really need to try to think about possibly shifting our attention to the East Coast. I know what is happening in the Bahamas is gut-wrenching. It's heartbreaking. And some folks are even asking about donations. And yes, we want to get the right links out to you. So Mari will probably end up researching that tomorrow, and we will try to get the best donation link set up that will go directly to that organization. But you know how some of these organizations are. So it's very important that you give to a reputable organization, and please take your time, do your research on that organization that you plan to donate to, because unfortunately, and you've heard this in the broadcast too, there are people out there who actually look forward to profiting off of someone else's misery, such as things as I remember last year when Hawaii was having the floods and their storm issues, and people were boating people over, but they were also charging them money, or basically threatening them, hey, if you don't give us your money, then we'll leave you here in this island. It was during Kilauea, actually. There were locals that were boating people off of the island to get them to safety, and basically some of these people on the boats were hijacking these folks into the middle of the waters and said, hey, you can either get out here or give us your money, and we'll take you to safety. And so what turned into what they thought was an act of kindness was just a way to exploit them for money. So it is important that we are responsible with the information that we're giving you guys. And that's why it does take a little bit of time when it comes to these stories. You got to make sure what footage you're showing is actual and legit. Some folks were asking for beach cameras on Florida right now. Guys, it's dark outside. We're not going to see anything. So if you see a channel that's trying to pass live coverage with daylight right now, chances are that's not real footage, unfortunately. But looking at this radar, guys, this storm that has been stationary now for a good 2 hours or more, and when you look at the ghost satellite that we have up in the corner here, it really does show you that this thing is just sitting over Freeport, and the eye wall of this storm continues to pummel that side of Freeport. And this has been going on all day now, where they've had to deal with the eye of this storm in that same location for nearly 24 hours. People are reported that they are trapped in their attics, and they're calling in these radio shows asking for help, asking for someone to rescue them, giving them the description of their house, because the house number definitely isn't going to be seen. They're telling people what their roof looks like, where it used to be, and what other neighboring landmarks were around them. But that's probably all changed now, thanks to this storm. And looking at this latest GOES satellite too, you know, you look for signs. Is it strengthening? Is it weakening? You know, the good news about a storm that stays stationary is that all that upwelling of the warm water eventually runs out, and you start getting cooler water. So that will prevail at some point if this storm continues to just sit there. There's no real good news about this. If it sits there and stalls out, it's going to turn north and spare Florida and other states that could have really gotten it. But if it stays stationary and takes a while to make that turn, it's continuing to destroy a small Bahama island right now. So either way you look at this storm, you could sit here and say, well, this is not happening in the United States, so I don't understand what the big deal is. The big deal is this storm is historic. And we're not going to see, maybe not, maybe, hopefully we don't see another storm like this ever. But you've got to wonder if this is going to be something that will change the way we look at weather from here on out, especially when you talk about space weather. Guys, I brought it up last night in my broadcast when I was giving an update on the hurricane around 8 o'clock last night. And I brought up some other tabs, and unfortunately I don't have them on me, but I can tell you the basics of these stats. Last September, 2017, we had space weather galore. In fact, the X2 solar flare that happened that month, a lot of people in the grand solar minimum denier climate, or the denier category there, they were trying to tell us that the grand solar minimum wasn't going to happen because the sun produced an X-class flare. It shouldn't do that. Well, let's analyze what's happening this September. There's an uptick in solar activity. Yes. There's another hurricane that's affecting the U.S. Yes. The difference between these two hurricanes is that the solar activity that we experienced from the sun was way more intense than what we're experiencing right now. And I know you're saying, what are you talking about? We just had 2 G2 geomagnetic storms, plus the KP indices were on the rise again, up to a 4 at last check. But the difference is back in September of 2017, we had about 3 active regions on the sun. 2 of them were big sunspots, okay? One sunspot was so big that we had a noticeable drop in TSI. Then we had the X-flare, and we had other solar events that happened as well. We had an energetic particle event. Now, I get it. This is only September 2nd, so who knows? Maybe we get some more events out of our sun. We had a CME as well. Well, the point I'm making is that this activity from the sun right now, believe it or not, is weaker than what we had going on in September of 2017. But nevertheless, this storm happened at the right time because our planet has been bombarded by cosmic rays and high solar wind speeds for the last almost 50 some hours now. So when you put that much highly charged particles in the atmosphere, and you've got this gigantic storm that's just feeding off of the ocean temperature, the energy from the ocean, and then the atmosphere is just coupling with it perfectly and fueling it with all these highly charged particles. This is the perfect storm as far as the combination of how the sun influences our weather here on Earth. Cosmic radiation. Somebody said, what has this hurricane got to do with grand solar minimum? And the answer is that the reason why it has anything to do with it is because of the solar activity, the solar storm, the increase of highly charged particles, the KP indices as high as they were. Right now we're back down to a 3, but still sitting at 648 solar wind speed. We're still getting bombarded by highly charged particles. And this could be the main reason why this storm has stayed so strong. I mean, it's still a category 4, folks. Either way you look at it. We are still in a category 4 hurricane warning for the Bahamas right now. So this is not just some weak thunderstorm, tropical depression type situation. This is still a major hurricane. This is still catastrophic. People can still lose their life in a storm like this. And unfortunately, right now it's only being reported that 5 people have lost their lives from this Hurricane Dorian in Alboco, the islands near Freeport. So, but this storm is still there. And can you imagine trying to do a rescue during these conditions, knowing that you're still facing hurricane force winds and that eye wall? It just seems to kind of just, it looks like it's going to lift away from the coast and then it just kind of falls back where it was. And this last little run here, if you're looking at what I'm looking at anyway. So lots to learn here, guys, lots to look at. I know a lot of us thought we had this storm under control, thought that, you know, we were going to see a track that was going to agree with what everybody had said. And that is not the case, unfortunately. Or actually, fortunately, because if the hurricane coverage happened the way they actually wanted it to, as far as the track goes, we'd be looking at a storm going across the state of Florida right now. All right, so let's go ahead and go into some tropical tidbits here. Take a look at the latest GFS models, okay? And Mari, are we good? Are we up on the screen? Okay, looks like we're good. All right, got my producer, Mari. By the way, Mari, thank you so much. We kind of collaborated tiny bits on what we wanted today, but Mari really, as always, I give her a piece of bread and a piece of cheese, and somehow she's able to turn it into a filet mignon with a baked potato. And that's what she did today for the production. And guys, we just wanted to make sure that you could see the footage, the track, the warnings, the satellite data, everything. And then this radio broadcast has been phenomenal for information about what's really happening down there. And for anybody who wants to call that fake, I'm telling you, they're pretty good actors and actresses to have the tremble in their voices when they report these rescue requests. All right, let's get right into it, folks. Take a look at our GFS models. This is for tomorrow. We still see the hurricane in place, not really moving, starting to budge. GFS is predicting the pressure to drop and then fall again as the hurricane begins to move north. And by the time we hit Wednesday, Jacksonville, Florida will get the effects of coastal flooding and coastal rains, but not hurricane force winds. Tropical storm winds, yes, but hurricane winds, no. So right now, according to this model, Jacksonville, Florida, you're definitely going to experience storm surge. No doubt in my mind. Southern Georgia as well. There will be storm surge. There will be flooding on the coast. How bad? That's still yet to be seen, but it could be, hopefully it's on the minor side. But what concerns me is going into Thursday is Charleston, South Carolina, and going into North Carolina after that. This is midday into late night. Thursday, you see, basically, it looks like we might have a landfall again, this time in northern South Carolina, near the southern state line, we're in North Carolina. So, again, that's where it looks like we could see another landfall, is in northern South Carolina, or possibly right smack dab in the middle of North Carolina. This is Friday, September 6th, and what we're looking at here is going to be tropical force to hurricane force winds. Now, this will be a Cat 2 at this point. Winds will still be between 100 and 120 miles an hour, so this is still nothing to joke with. All right, so here we are on Thursday. It starts in South Carolina, the big time. The rains will be picking up. Actually, your conditions will start to deteriorate late Wednesday night into Thursday morning as this storm begins to make landfall in northern South Carolina, and I think North Carolina and Virginia really almost get the worst of this. Well, parts of Virginia, I should say. This storm is going to stay along the East Coast near the Atlantic states, the mid-Atlantic states, and skirt past Jersey and possibly flirt with kissing New York City. And when I say this, we will probably see some storm surge. We will see some wave action, and we might see some coastal flooding from this up in the Northeast in New England. Very possible. If this storm track budges a little bit more to the west. I mean, this is next Saturday, guys. And we saw how crazy this track was from the beginning. When we started talking about this on Thursday, we weren't really sure what was going to happen. Some folks thought maybe this was going to smack Florida, go into the Gulf, heat up, and then hit Mississippi. But that is not what's happening. And a week later from tonight, we're going to be talking about this storm in Maine. Okay? So the GFS run is showing that this storm is far from over. The aftermath, unfortunately, is going to last for months, if not years, in certain parts of the world right now. And, you know, just how damaging will this coastal storm be? I don't have a crystal ball. That's too far out for me to even think about guessing. Right now, just basing on what we've seen in the last 48 hours, I think anything's on the table. Now, I'm fast forwarding this a little bit, guys, because I want to show you high pressure systems in the Atlantic really are doing us a huge favor, by the way. Thank God that these high pressure systems are going to be in place by this point in September, and I'll show you why. There is another wave off of Africa that some folks are paying attention to at this moment. However, I'm happy to report, as long as we continue to see the forecasting of these high pressure systems in the Atlantic, these storms will just curl up and miss the U.S. and go into the middle Atlantic. Now, let's hope that these things disintegrate by the time they make it to where they're going next. Now, this last run here of this particular model actually moves a little closer to the East Coast. Earlier, it was in the middle of the Atlantic. Again, this is September 18th, okay? But right now, this storm, if this high pressure system here happens to camp out in the middle of the Atlantic, this storm will ride that ridge and go, unfortunately, towards our friends across the seas there in the UK. Hopefully it reaches colder waters and it just turns into a regular old rainstorm. But high pressure across the Atlantic is what we are rooting for, because this could be another potentially dangerous storm if the track begins to change further to the west. All right, so pretty much what we're looking at, guys, is we have a Category 4 hurricane in the Atlantic right next to Florida, basically. I mean, we're basically kissing cousins at this point. The amount of moisture, let's take a look at that. Let's see how much total rain we are going to have after this storm is said and done. And that's not the reading I wanted here, but it'll have to do. All right, let's go back to this. Sorry, folks. Technical delay here. Let's go back into the States. Check out our regular forecast here. Mari, would you like to say anything? Any observations that you've made? This is really this is a first for both of us as far as covering a major. I mean, we covered Harvey, we covered Irma, we covered Maria, but you know, again, this is a historic storm in many ways than just the actual storm itself. All the correlations with the space weather and just the intensity of the storm and how it just doesn't seem like it's going to go away.
I think this was what this has made people think is this hurricane storm scale. The winds they're calling this a Cat 5 plus, because if you look at the hurricane storm scale, I think anything what's the, is it 150? What was the
157 qualifies a Cat 5.
So anything higher than 157 would be a Cat 5, and the sustained winds on average were what? 185. So
actually, there's reports, and these are not confirmed reports, but there were reports last night that there were 195 mile an hour sustained winds in certain parts last night.
I mean, incredible numbers. And I've heard outlets say, should we adjust the scale? Should we add to it? And in this case, it's like, yeah.
Well, do we adjust the scale for one giant storm though? I mean, this could possibly, and you asked me this question earlier, but this could possibly be one of the hurricanes of the century that we'll talk about. I want to
call it the storm of the century, but then you look over to
Bahamas. It is.
Well, absolutely to Bahamas it is. You look over to China and Japan and all the people suffering from monsoon. India. I mean, pick a country. It's crazy. The storms that we have seen in 2019 have been insane. And I really, highly charged particles are what is fueling this precipitation. And not enough weather forecasters, I think, are talking about that aspect. We're few that actually make that connection.
I was watching some comments in the chat, and some of you have been here watching off and on all day today, and it's because they can't find the comprehensive coverage. Again, thanks to Mari for putting all this footage together, these radars together, and then the radio station out of Nassau. That is crucial information, folks. The hope is that people share this video, they share this link, and that family and friends that are from this area will actually get the message out and maybe help save someone's life, or maybe help people find lost family members or lost friends down there. Again, this is something that we haven't ever faced before, especially here in the Bahamas. And when you look at the radar and you see that storm that's just stationary and it starts to lift off like it's going to the north, and then the last frame, it almost looks like this storm drops back a little bit further south. I mean, are you seeing what I'm seeing, Mario? Watch this right here at the very end, right there. Watch it.
Yeah.
It's wobbling. Let's just put it that way. It's not necessarily dropping to the south, but it is wobbling. So other than that, Mari, I didn't know if there was anything else that you wanted to talk about before we head off the air. Really, I mean, Monday nights normally are, we do a show, we talk about climate, but this is kind of taking over things. Right now, I think what we want to do is people that live in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, especially at this point in time, you guys are the next areas that need to start taking precautions. Maybe if you can drive away from the coast for a few days, evacuate. This thing might track off a little bit further to the east even. It may pull away from the coast still. But right now, as close as the storm is, the models usually get a little bit better as you get closer to the storm day. Mari, did you want to add something there?
I have gotten an incredible amount of love in the chat from people.
Well, you deserve it.
I'm humbled about that. I do this out of the passion for the weather, but also out of the compassion I have for people experiencing these storms. It takes my breath away, what I'm seeing online. And other people I know, if they had it put in front of them, would feel the same way I do. And that's why we're on this channel showing it, because we've been going nonstop since yesterday morning, haven't we, Jake?
We have, and again, there's not going to be any question about the truth, what happened here, and we want to make sure it was well documented. And folks, it seems like you're paying attention, and we really appreciate that. And as soon as we can find reputable links to send donations to these people directly, we will inform you of that as well. But other than that, guys, we're going to continue our coverage on Hurricane Dorian. It's only the beginning, unfortunately. This storm is not expected to actually move any direction until sometime in the middle of the night tonight. So by the time most of us wake up to go to work tomorrow morning, this storm may have only moved about 8 miles at most. So, and that was the reality that we woke up to this morning, thinking, okay, it's 185 miles an hour. Hopefully when we wake up, it's down to 150, it's in the water, it's moving away from the island, and it's making that north turn. In fact, it did the opposite of that and hung around a little bit longer than I think people expected. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Actually, after this broadcast right here, we will continue with the live feeds here on the Grand Solar Minimum channel. We'll talk soon, folks. Take care.